I think my favorite moment was in the final few seconds of our gold medal win in 2012. As the seconds ticked off the clock, I got to look up in the stands and point and wave at my wife and my friends and family who were there. That was a pretty special moment.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Let's Move Canada. We are your hosts, Luigi and Dana, as usual, from the Canadian Health and Fitness Institute. In today's episode, we will talk with National Paralympian gold medalist Patrick Anderson about what inspires him to live a life of fitness and what staying active and healthy means to him. Now, before jumping in, we want to always start by saying that this podcast is being brought to you by the Canadian Health and Fitness Institute, a national organization whose mission is to make Canada the greatest nation on earth via fitness by 2030. And with this goal, our podcast aims to raise awareness about physical and mental health. And of course, that brings us to today's amazing guest, Patrick Anderson, who, having lost his legs to a drunk driver at the age of 9, overcame adversity through dedication, fortunate circumstances, and exceptional coaching, ultimately achieving success as a professional basketball player. Now, he secured multiple victories as a world champion and earned 4 Paralympian medals, clinching gold in 2000, 2004, and 2012, along with a silver in 2008. Now, in 2016, Patrick temporarily stepped away from sports to pursue a musical venture, the Layawakes, with his wife, Anna. Now returning to the Team Canada for the Tokyo 2020 Paralympics, he and Anna now reside in Brooklyn, New York, raising their 3 amazing, lovable children. Thank you so much for joining us, Patrick. Welcome, welcome.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yes, we're so excited for you to be here. So our first question is, how did your love of sports start, and were you very active as a child?
Started, well, I don't know. I probably couldn't have been more active as a child, from what I remember. I'm the 5th of 7 kids.
Oh, wow.
And I followed a couple my parents had 2 girls and then 4 boys in their own, and 3 of the boys. So I had these 2 older brothers that I chased around. We lived small town life in Ontario. I was born in Edmonton, Alberta, but we grew up in Ontario, and we were pretty free range, back in the early 80s and a small town. And so, we explored the town on bikes, on foot, on skates, up trees. So I was sort of active from morning till dusk, and I sort of lived for whatever sport was going on at school, whatever intramural was being played at lunchtime. And like a lot of Canadian kids, I think my love of sport sort of came mainly through hockey early on. As I mentioned, being from Edmonton. My dad was an Edmonton native, and so we grew up watching the Oilers. And I don't know if you know, but the 80s was a great time to be an Oilers fan. This guy named
I don't know
Wayne.
much about that, honestly, about the Oilers. I'm from BC, so but so
this is your year. This is your year.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I just thought your team won the Stanley Cup every year. That was just life, So but those games were on pretty late, So I remember a lot of first periods, and then falling asleep and waking up in the morning somehow, got to my bed. Yeah, I guess that was it started kind of through hockey, but I really did love any sport I could get my hands on growing up, for sure.
It sounds like it started out like a very active lifestyle, and it continues to be one. So very curious to know if you could tell us the story of how you came to pursue basketball as a career.
Oh yeah, it's a long story, but I'll try to keep within the boundaries of our conversation here. No, I basketball in the late 80s. I don't know. This is pre-Raptors, pre-Steve Nash, pre-Michael Jordan. Even it was sort of Larry Bird and Magic Johnson's league, and so basketball was just one of many sports. It didn't really hold any particular attention, or my attention in a particular way. But as you mentioned in the intro, I got hit by a car when I was 9, and found myself, that next year just sort of healing. I'm an amputee, a double amputee, just below the legs on both sides. So, um, but I got prosthetic legs not too long after my accident, but I could tell pretty soon that wasn't really going to be my avenue for like being active. They were just too clunky, too slow, too sore. The technology was still, it's much more rudimentary than 40 years later. Jeepers, is that long? Something like that. 30 something years later. And so I was just sort of desperate to get my independence back and get back up the tree and back on the ice and all that kind of stuff. And it was pretty frustrating. But mercifully, thank God, I was introduced to wheelchair basketball just a year after my accident. So I was, 10, 11 years old, and I was introduced to it by some Paralympians who were just the best dudes, the best athletes. They were just, it just got me super excited and planted a seed in my imagination right away about, hey, someday maybe, you got long arms and short legs, you got a nice little recipe for wheelchair basketball, So they planted that seed of becoming a pro and a Paralympian like very early, without making it. Also planting the seed that if you work hard at this and stick with it, you might someday, and that wasn't going to be a problem because as soon as I started playing, I was kind of hooked. So, but it took a little while, to get a dedicated chair. I was using a hospital chair at the time, and to get even a regular day chair took a little bit, and then to get a sports chair. But in all those I hit those kind of steps pretty quick, and I always been very grateful. It's a little bit of a. I was just really fortunate and blessed I was in Fergus, Ontario, near Kitchener-Waterloo, where the sports club was, just like a half an hour up the road. And that's not everyone's story who acquires a disability. Some of that's just luck. Do you live near some Paralympians with spare wheelchairs and spare time and a big heart to take you under their wing and teach you the game and introduce you to the game? And parents who are able to like kind of schlep you around and get you there. I mean, my parents, like I said, they had 6 other kids to get to stuff and whatever, and so it was a real team effort to kind of like just get me out there. And a lot of people factor into that story, like both within my family and around our family and our small community and stuff. So anyway, that's sort of how it started. And I just got more and more serious about it as I grew up. And then so at some point when I was a teenager, I realized I just knew I was going to go down to the States to go play college. And I was sort of getting involved with the junior national team program at that time. It just sort of dawned on me when I was maybe 16 or 15 or 16 that like this was more than just a fun hobby. This is going to sort of take me somewhere, if you know what I mean. But I didn't exactly know where. But I at least knew that much. It was going to take me to the States probably for school, and I graduated a year earlier than my classmates, so I could just get on the road, just get going with it. And the national team at a young age, and then sort of taking lots of twists and turns from there. But yeah, I was on some kind of journey that was gonna be pretty, sort of span the world, and who knows how much in my life. I did not expect that I'd be 40, whatever, and still be. I'm, tuning in from Spain where I'm playing pro here.
That's so cool. That's
for
so
the first
cool.
time in a few years.
Where in Spain?
We are in Bilbao. The team is in Bilbao, which is in the north of Spain, in the Basque region. We're in like a small town. I'm returning to my roots, and it's like we're in this small town. We have 3 young kids here, and they're running around. And
that's so cool.
I told you it starts again with our kids, and we're trying to find gymnastics for our oldest. I bought him a basketball a few days ago, and the youngest we're just still getting settled here. But yeah, it's just funny, like where they're going to be, what they're going to do for sports, for activity is it's right up there on the list of things that parents.
So your kids are active too.
Yeah, it's just like that's my wife's from athletic family. Amazing. Played sports. She played university volleyball at Trinity Western out in Vancouver.
Okay, cool.
Langley. So yeah, it's baked into kind of how we've lived our own lives, and it's a value in our family.
Right. That's amazing. So how do you find health and fitness and being active and physically active is important, not just to physical health, but also to mental health?
I really, I don't have a lot of personal experience to share about like um, dealing with mental health issues like head on. So, I can't really speak from personal experience about like and any kind of uh, obviously I'm not a mental health expert. Few people are, but so I don't really know what to call it. But yeah, I mean, I feel better from head to toe, when I'm active, and I've never really not been active, and so in some ways I don't really know what that feels like, and probably for the better.
Yeah,
I've been
right.
I've been not active for weeks at a time, and I've dealt with some injuries in my career, but so I know what it feels like to me to kind of start to lose that um, fitness and connection with my body and strength and stuff like that. But it's been thankfully short lived, and I've gotten back to it. You know what I mean? So I don't
Right,
really
because
know.
you've been basically active since you were a kid and you
Yeah.
haven't really, yeah. So it just feels normal. It just feels like the way you are all the time,
It does.
right?
So
Like,
yeah.
yeah. Not like
So I don't
me,
want
where
to
it's
try to
like
get these
I'll go to the gym
conclusions.
for a month and I'm done for 6 months. And yeah. Yeah.
So for all of our
Yeah.
audience out there, it can become a lifestyle, right? Like just working out, it can be part of your lifestyle without feeling like it's actually work, right? Like it's part of who you are and what you do. So that's just such a great perspective to be exposed to.
And you're
Well,
still doing it, which is just awesome.
yeah. I like I said, I feel very lucky, and I've tried. There's ways in which I've been sort of isolated from training opportunities. Like living in New York wasn't necessarily the easiest place to train, and I had to kind of patch it together. Meaning there wasn't like a lot of guys to train with, and so it was a lot of more sort of self-motivated individual training, and that's quite frankly that's harder. It's harder in a number of ways. It's harder to get to the gym. It's harder to kind of switch on mentally and emotionally in the kind of ways that like bring that energy that leads to a good workout that you leave the gym with a good feeling about physically and mentally. You know what I mean? So and so I do feel like I'm just one of these people who I sometimes see exercise classes at gyms, and I like feel envious because I love to just jump in there. But generally speaking, when I see them, it's not something that's going to work for an amputee. I've jumped into classes and can modify some things, but for me, going out and playing basketball is like the best. I was just talking to one of my former teammates about this because I'm like, in some ways, I feel like when I retire, if and when I finally retire, it's I think it's a when, but it's starting to feel like an if at my age. But um, I on one part of me feels like I need to take a break from the sport. On the other hand, it's just the best workout because it's very dynamic. It's not too much of any one thing. I think we all have probably a COVID story about struggling with fitness, and one of the things that being locked out of basketball and having to sort of mimic it on my own on a track or in a parking lot, which just led to a lot of repetitive movements, which led to injury. Actually, in my case, that I had to deal with going forward. And basketball itself, though, is like as long as you're kind of stretching and doing the things that keep and lifting and doing the things keeping you strong, and it's very dynamic in a way that makes it for a good workout without being too repetitive in any kind of one way and too much um, like too many like kind of overuse injuries. Like all that to say, and it's just fun. You don't feel like you're exercising. And that's my experience. It's like the less you feel like you're exercising, the better. And for me, it's basketball. For
Right.
other people, you run. It might be a more sort of monotonous, cycling or running or something like that. But I don't know if that's how hard that is to find for people. For me, when I'm playing wheelchair basketball or when I played sledge hockey at times in my life, I've been in places where I've gotten involved in that. And it's just like I'm not thinking about exercise. It's the last thing I'm thinking about when I'm doing the thing. It is
Right.
great exercise. So
It's the
that's
way
the
to do it,
magic.
right? Yeah.
Right.
That's the magic.
Yeah.
But that's not easy to find. So I get it. Anyway, yeah.
Again, such great perspective, right? With just having something that is so part of your lifestyle. Now, one thing that has me wondering is with getting that energy emotionally, physically to go. And like emotionally is one thing, but physically is another. And one thing that supports that a lot is diet, right? Like what you eat, your dietary regimen. So very curious to know if you follow a specific dietary regimen when you're exercising versus when you're not? I'm sorry, versus when you're training versus when you're not.
Yeah. I'm not super militant, for lack of a better word. I exercise common sense, of course, and I guess I use some supplements like protein powder to make shakes, and I use some bars and things like that. For the most part, like I'm not a great cook, but I like cooking. I like baking bread. I like. I'm not a foodie either, but I think that's also one of those things where like you can chase nutritious eating, or you can just somehow develop a taste for like healthy, nutritious food, not eat too much of it. Like the Michael Pollan, like eat food, not too much, mostly
The
plants. Like
Omnivore's Dilemma.
learn.
The
Yeah,
Omnivore's
that's right.
Dilemma book. Yeah, yeah.
That's the author. Yeah, he's like in what is it, 7 words or something? Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. I don't know if I eat mostly plants, but he's saying like eat some meat, but not too much. Don't eat too much food, and make sure it's food and it's not coming out of a lab somewhere.
Right.
Yeah, if you need that, that's a good
No
sort
way
of
from
rule of thumb. But
process.
generally speaking, if you're into if you're into cooking food from scratch, in my case, I'm interested in it, and I think it probably happens to be healthier. But that's sort of downstream of just like maybe having a healthy approach to food. I'm not saying I'm perfect at this, but because you can obsess about beer and quality beer, and drink too much of it or too much cheese or whatever it is. Like everything has to be in moderation. But
Yeah, balance it.
if you love food and you love like if you love food as opposed to and keep that sort of in. Sometimes that's in tension with healthy eating and a healthy lifestyle. But to me, that's a healthy way to approach it with some guardrails. About eating too much of the bad stuff and eating too much in general.
Right. I mean, cooking and making things from scratch. I think that's the best way to eat healthy, right? Because you're just going to avoid processed food. You're going to cook whatever you want to eat. It's going to be healthy. You know exactly what you're putting in there. You know what oils you're using. You know what amount of sugar you're using, and everything like that. And it's so much healthier. So like, I think one of my biggest pieces of advice for people that want to eat healthy is like make your own food.
Yeah. And you get so engaged with it,
And learn how to cook and like cooking. And sorry, Luigi? What did you say?
I'm sorry, I was saying that you just get so engaged with it and you can't wait to taste your meal, Like I know that for me, when I cook from scratch, I always think, well, I mean, I'm tasting it through, but I'm excited for that end result. I'm excited to share it at the end. So, there's a little community building that happens afterwards.
Yeah.
There's no lack of food gurus these days, but back before Instagram and everything else, it was Jamie Oliver, who's still around doing his thing, but you probably know him. But I mean, he's the one who sort of empowered me and got me excited about cooking, and he also, and he cares about food, a lot of cheese, a lot of oil, a lot of, it's not always the healthy stuff, but he's also taken a healthy approach, especially over his career, and sort of combine that, like a real love for food. I think he loves food more than he loves healthy eating. Well, I think that is a healthy approach, but he does care about health, and I think approach is sharing his love for food in a way that acknowledges that, honors that. So he's been helpful. But making yourself. I mean, before I had kids, it was this weird thing where we were at a basketball tournament in Montreal, and I was wheeling from the gym or from the hotel to the gym, and I passed this big I don't want to name the company because I don't have anything against this company. Big food company, and it's this giant factory and it's the company that makes cookies. And for some reason, I remember thinking that day, I was like, that's probably not where cookies should come from. Like the giant factory with the smokestack and the whole thing, and like we make cookies here. Like you make cookies in there, and I just had this thought, like maybe someday if I have kids, I'll just be like, you can eat whatever you want as long as you make it. I don't know where that thought came from, but it comes back every time.
That's
now,
a good idea.
Kids,
that's an interesting, right?
As if we do that.
That'd be a lot of work.
That is not.
But I try to make. I mean, I make most of the things I eat for sure. Try to as much as I possibly can. But if I try not to make like bread and stuff like that, because I will eat the whole loaf. I'll just bake something.
Doesn't last a day. You and I
not
both
even a day.
It does not. No. Yeah, it doesn't last a day.
Yeah.
It doesn't taste better. It doesn't taste as good the next day. It's gotta go.
That's true. It's so good. Homemade bread and all that. Oh my god. So you've had an amazing career and a long career, right? It's been a long career. So what are some of the most memorable moments of your and highlights of your basketball career? There's probably a
Um,
lot.
there are many. Um, but of course there are a few that stand out. I mean, it's a mix of the highs and the lows, really, because the lows are
Mhm.
such turning points in some ways. And it's partly because I've told some of those stories over the years, and those are the ones that tend to stick. The stories that you tell over and over again. But there's a reason why you tell those stories. And I feel like the pinnacle, the most memorable was 2012 when we won our last gold medal, which is cheapers. That's like, I don't know. That's 12 years ago. It's kind of crazy to think that, yeah, it was that long ago.
Time flies.
But it was the end of an era, um, and we had been the best. I feel like we didn't always win, but we were the team to beat for so many years. And then I took some time away even after 2008, and I was coming back to the team, and there were some fault lines forming, like just personally when you're in the trenches with people for a long time and getting older, and people have different, starting to grow families and stuff like that. We're all still very tight, but it just happens at the end of the road where you sort of pulled in different directions. But we kind of really came together, and put aside the secondary things and focused on the primary thing, which was like doing Canada proud and taking one last crack at this thing. And it was the closest final we'd had, and we were against our sort of rivals, the Australians, and my new wife Anna was in the crowd wearing a red dress, and so it all kind of came together in a beautiful way. And I'd always played okay in the big games, but I never had like my best game in the gold medal game, and that was the one time when I did have my sort of best performance when it mattered most. And of course, that feels like there's a sense of completion about that kind of performance that I feel lucky to have had. We had such a great team. I always got sort of more credit than I deserved for our team success. That's just sort of what happens in team sports sometimes. Um, but on that day, I feel like I earned it. Not that I carried us to anything, but I just like, oh yeah, that was a standout performance, and I was proud of it because I put a lot of work in. But on the flip side, we had some setbacks when I was young, and especially 2002. We won the gold in 2000, and in 2002 we came out and lost to the USA team, and that was my moment to realize like nothing's taken for granted. Like after we won in 2000, I was in the locker room after the game. We're in Australia, and I was like, we went around in a circle. Everyone took their turn, like saying something before we went off into the night or whatever we were doing, and to celebrate. I said, guys, that was great. Let's go do it again. It's like this is just the start. This is the start of a dynasty. And the next guy to talk was James, is much older, wiser person than me, and he's like, "Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Pat, but not right now." He's like, "We just won with this group, these guys, this
Yeah.
moment. It's about this team and this accomplishment, and we'll think about that tomorrow or next week or whatever." And that was a real sort of an eye opener for me. Of course, I got it in my head, and the funny thing about that is we were both right, but he was more right, if that makes sense in the moment. And sure enough, 2 years later, like we lost in the, our next step, our World Championships, or step in my dynasty plan, sort of failed, and I realized, oh yeah, there's no givens here, and but that also sort of motivated us to give our best in 2004 and sort of reclaim our crown, so to speak. So that loss in 2002, yeah, was sort of a pivot, I think, for me, and sort of motivated me, and it sent me over to Europe for the first time. 'Cause my teammate Joey and I, who was from Winnipeg, or Lorette, Manitoba, we were just like, we had this great chemistry, and we wanted to further it, deepen it. So we went together to play club because we wanted to play with each other and experience Europe. And so we were young guys in our 20s, but we also wanted to bring that back to Team Canada, sort of a next level of chemistry and working together. And we're able to do that. And that's part of what fueled, I think, our success in the coming years. And that partly flowed out of that loss in 2002. So yeah, there's a lot more stories. Some of, the ups
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the challenges that sometimes sort of informed or fueled the next chapter and the next success.
Sounds like an exciting life. fun,
Yeah,
fun, exciting.
not bad.
A lot of ups and downs, right? But
Yeah.
overall, yeah.
Yeah, more downs in recent years as far as the results
Oh.
go. I'm waiting for the big payoff so I can have this
Yeah.
conversation with somebody. I'm like, yeah, all those losses prepared us for
Still,
this
it's
big,
coming. It's
this big
coming. The
win.
big win is
Yeah,
coming.
Coming,
Yeah. We'll
going out
follow
on a
it. We'll
high.
definitely follow it. Yeah.
It's such a wholesome answer too, because I love that what's memorable is the highs and the lows, not just the highs, not just the lows. Because I like how you can pull lessons like, being in the moment, don't take anything for granted, right? Like all of these things are important. Across the different sectors of all of our lives. So, for anyone who may want to become a professional athlete, what other advice would you give them?
Well, I double down on that advice. I mean, you enjoy your wins, but you learn from your losses, and we just lost a painful one on Saturday with my club team here and a bit of unexpected, 1 point loss on our home court. And everyone's doing some soul searching and watching the video. And we're having a talk tonight before practice, and we're going into Champions League in Istanbul this weekend. And so we got to get, answer some questions here quickly. And, we pull that game out. Like the difference of 2 points, we're still asking some of those questions, but not with the same urgency. And that's just how it goes. It's human nature. And so you're never going to win all your games. And so some ways you're going to have to deal with loss one way or another. And your motivation probably is already to sort of dig in and figure out why. So as long as you don't get too down with your losses, I mean, that's also a risk, that you just get too in the weeds with what went wrong. And so I would suggest that, but you got to sort of examine and take advantage of that natural sort of impulse to be like, like dwell on the loss. Like, okay, we'll make it constructive and try to get analytical about it with some other people, get some other voices in the room, and so you can compare notes and not get stuck in your own perspective and make sure you're not. This I think applies to life, not just basketball, but like I could sit here and try to think about what happened in the game, but my it's a little more constructive to kind of go back to the data. In this case, like watch the game, maybe watch it with the teammates and break it down together. And so you get different perspectives dealing with the thing. Not just your memory of kind of recollection of what happened, which is colored by feelings and forgetfulness and not seeing the whole picture because you're focused on your side on defense and didn't see what happened on the offside. So kind of taking a step back, you got a loss or something set back, you kind of take a step away from it. Let it simmer a little bit, go back and watch the tape, pull some stuff out, compare notes with somebody and see if you can make some adjustments. And you're not going to fix everything in one step, but to me, that's how I improved as a player, is gaining confidence from the wins and gaining perspective and from the losses, and not by myself, but with great coaches and, generally speaking, great caring coaches and teammates who are in it, for each other. I've been very blessed that way. I've only had one or two experiences where I was like, this is bad. This is not unhealthy people and relationships, over a long career. That's pretty lucky, So I hope that's not too rambling.
No, that's great advice. Like,
no, that makes sense.
Learn from your losses. Yeah. Be introspective but don't get too down on it to the point where you can't function.
And that last part about
great advice.
Yeah, and that last part about, building right relationships or acknowledging those right relationships so that you could build community that supports you and your dreams and, making sure you're aligned with everyone. I think that's so powerful, right? Like just keeps you moving forward. So I thought that was an awesome answer. It made sense to me.
Yeah.
Print it.
We'll run it. So what are some of your interests and hobbies outside of professional basketball?
I like to scroll incessantly on my phone.
Me too.
Try to be honest. I'm gonna be like, I read books. Yeah, I like to cook. No, I do. Those things are sort of both true on some occasions. But we just got a piano delivered today, a rental piano.
Awesome.
Which is mostly for my wife. She's the music director at our church and has kind of needs a piano to kind of stay plugged into doing her job from a distance. But also we have a band that when we can perform together. So I have my guitar here and now we have a piano. So That's been
Do you
fun. I always
do you guys
try.
write songs? Or do you
Yeah.
covers? What do you, yeah?
No, we have a couple albums that she wrote most
Wow.
of the songs. We wrote some together. I wrote a couple. But one of our maybe goals for while we're here for about 6 months, and the kids are in school. All three kids, so we maybe will come home with some new songs, which would be really cool. But
So where can
I
everyone
shouldn't say
listen
that.
to your albums?
Well, we're called Delay Awakes, and we have 2 albums on all the usual places, Spotify and whatnot.
Amazing. I'm gonna go check it out right after this.
Please do. But I would even more recommend Anna's latest, because she put out an EP last year called Kara. So under Anna Paddock, that's her name, maiden name. And our youngest
Very
is
cool.
Kara, and she wrote about a bunch of songs when Kara was born. And I wasn't involved in that project other than sort of watching the kids when she was in the studio. But I think it's amazing. So that's the sort of latest thing. But Anna Paddock.
Amazing.
But yeah, our stuff's called the Layawakes, and so that's been cool. We've done that together since, not right away in our marriage, but a few years now. And yeah, and like I said, I like
That's
to
very
cook,
cool.
and I do like to read.
What do you like to read? Do you like nonfiction or fiction, or what do you like to read?
Or cookbooks. Let's not forget.
Books is reading, a lot of pictures, but that's fine too, right? Okay. My favorite author is G.K. Chesterton. He wrote it all. He wrote nonfiction. He wrote the Father Brown sort of detective series. He wrote
Oh, cool.
apologetics. He wrote poetry. So he's sort of a one-stop shop for
wow.
me for all types of things. But
Okay, cool. Very cool.
yeah.
Now, to kind of just wrap everything up, we're very curious to know if you could change one thing today in Canada related to health and fitness, what would it be?
That's a tough one in a number of ways, because I haven't lived in Canada for a number of years, for one. And so I don't want to be the armchair American.
It's okay. I live in America. I live in the US too. So
And I just moved from the US a year and a half ago. So
yeah. But I grew up in
Great.
Canada. I was born in Canada. So, no judgment.
Same here.
So what was it about the crappy culture in Canada that made you leave? No,
Yeah.
that's what I want to avoid. Who are you?
No. I married an American, so I moved to the States. Yeah.
And your love will make you to leave
Crazy
your
things.
homeland. Yeah, crazy thing. Moved to New York City. I would maybe just slightly reframe it or recast it as like something that I would love to see continue and even grow more, and which is just the integration of adaptive sports in communities and schools. And I got to give a shout out to my friend Andy Spears, who's a high school or not a high school teacher, a teacher in Elora, Ontario. And he started a wheelchair basketball schools program a few years ago, and he slapped my name on it. I had this much to do with like actually getting it off the ground and helping him, get some chairs through my sponsor and helping him with a little bit of the tiny bit of the curriculum. But it was 99.9% him and his wife, and they did the same with a sledge hockey program in the school board. So essentially building this fleet of chairs and then getting the school board to buy in, and it moves around from school to school, and kids can play wheelchair basketball for a week or two, and then there's some sort of learning that can work into their curriculum, and he calls it the Pat Anderson Schools program. These chairs move around.
Wow.
That is so cool.
Really amazing.
So growing that program
really
across Canada, would be
great.
And
I know there are other places where it's happening. It's not a coast to coast thing, which is fine. It's happening on a local level in a number of places, and that's something. I guess it's more something to celebrate. But it's expensive. Like wheelchairs are unnecessarily expensive. It's like any piece of medical kind of equipment. There's small companies doing it, and there's not like the large numbers that drive down the prices of, say, like a bicycle or a hockey helmet. So.
Mm-hmm.
They are expensive to get ones that are good enough to have a good experience in and hold up over time. So there's sort of a high bar financially and otherwise to get something like that off the ground. And so, but I think that's so cool because it was an eye opener for me. I went to Japan a number of times early in my career, They have a tournament in
Mhm.
Kitakyushu, Japan. And every year we would go over there, and we'd always have to go a day early because they had to send us out to these schools. And when they did, we'd go out to these. There was always fifth graders, and this is the same city that had hosted the World Championships in 2002, where we finished third and had our reckoning. And the legacy of that tournament hosting was that the city of Kitakyushu invested a whole bunch of money in fleets of wheelchairs for all the public schools, and they focused on fifth grade. And from my understanding, they focused on fifth grade because it's kind of a year where like boys and girls are sort of big enough and strong enough to like handle wheelchairs and get the most out of it, but they're not old enough where some of the gap, the strength or whatever in size is like opened up between boys and girls. They haven't hit puberty yet, so they're like, this is a great age for boys and girls to like tackle this new interesting thing. And they do it for like a couple of months, and then when we come for this tournament, it's right before they have a big citywide schools tournament. And so they send us out to these schools, and they make us play against, they invite us to play against these kids. And we show up thinking, okay, we'll split up and we'll take some kids on our team and your team, and we'll play against each other. And the kids are always like, no, we want to play against you because we got a huge tournament tomorrow, and we need to see how good we are and see if we can hang with you guys. And so then concurrently, like with the tournament that we play in, these school kids are there, and they're playing in their and this tournament against other kids. And that was just an eye-opener for me, like how like it can be done, and all these kids can have this experience, and so many things, positive things flow out of that. You find kids with disabilities, even a minimal disability, who is introduced to sport, and that's their gateway in. But you also, this whole group of kids, even if they never play it again, they've had this formative experience, and the experience wheelchair basketball is just sort of a normal thing, another type of active sport. And so when they encounter it potentially later on in their lives and have a chance to be an advocate for it, or a coach or a volunteer, or support somebody, or they meet somebody with a disability and say, hey, I played wheelchair basketball once, it was really cool, you should check it out. There's so many ways down the road where that can just increase the just what we're talking about, like active living and active sports for people with and without disabilities, and sort of build these bridges of understanding like between people. Because I can tell you about wheelchair basketball, and you can nod and follow along with me, and you can see it and be like, don't let me tell you about it, come watch a game. You can come watch a game and you'd be like, oh, I see what you're talking about now, well, that's pretty cool. But then once you get in there, you jump in the chair and do the thing, to me that's even more transformative. And my other example was my oldest brother, Dan, he was a high-level hockey player, and he played junior B hockey, and he was my older brother and a great athlete. He sort of fell into playing for a few years in his early 20s with me. We were traveling around France, and a team was like, you got to meet us at the tournament in France. I'm like, my brother, it's the summertime, I'm not coming. And they're like, bring him, we'll bring him a chair, he can play. And I was like, hey, you want to go to Normandy? And like, sure. So we drove across France.
Really cool. Yeah.
Just
we met these guys
at Normandy.
And so anyway, my brother got the bug, and he played that tournament, and then he stuck with it for a couple of years, and he got pretty good, and to the point where we were like going at it. And it's the thing that I could never really do that with my brothers, right? Like I was, we weren't going to wrestle, and they weren't going to throw their amputee brother around. Like it just wouldn't look good. It wouldn't be a good look for them, But I wanted that. I was like little brother. I wanted to test myself against my brother, and finally I could, And so I think even now we have this sort of look, like where I think he gets, as much as my family's been supportive, and I think gets what I've done and gets the sport and everything, my brother just a little bit more, because he's walked a mile, if not a mile, at least a little bit in my shoes, and we played against each other, and we kind of understand each other as athletes. And it's like, oh, you're an athlete, and that kind of, again, that's another type of sort of bridge of understanding that we can build. So that's my short answer.
I love that story. I love that story. It's so nice for people, like for kids, that are maybe went through something similar to you growing up, and have people like you to look up to and mentor as mentors and inspiration, right? It's like, I feel like that's really important. Like it's important to have somebody that inspires you.
Yeah.
I think that's probably fortunate.
Yeah. I think it's neat when it's somebody who maybe doesn't look like you. Like I like that kids with disabilities come up to me, and like I've seen your Instagram or whatever. But when kids who don't have disabilities can look up to me as somebody that, to me, that touches even something else about like our shared humanity that's like transcends like our physical ability, and you could map that onto other differences that we may have that aren't as deep as some of the similarities that we have. So I think it underscores that mindset in a healthy, positive way.
Yeah.
Integrating people with disabilities in our sport.
So Patrick, thank you again so much for joining us, and good luck this weekend. We want to thank everyone for tuning in into this episode. Of course, we're your hosts, Luigi and Dana. Be sure to follow Patrick on Instagram at Patrick Anderson or on his website at patrickanderson.ca. Also, check out the Layaways for some awesome music with Patrick and his wife, Anna. And Patrick had also mentioned the Patrick Anderson program. We'll make sure to link this if you want to learn. And maybe we should reach out to them, Dana, for Let's Move Canada challenge for this summer,
We
right?
should. We should.
And last but not least, make sure to follow us on that Let's Move Canada for latest updates. Head over to our website, chfi.fit, for more about our mission, next episodes, etc. If you want to participate or recommend anyone, we are here. We're waiting for you. And that is it for today, folks. Thank you and see you next time.
Thank you.